Hello and welcome to Keeping It Young podcast, conversations about marriage, family, and ministry life. I'm Dave.
And I'm Bethany.
And we are the Youngs.
We're so glad you've joined us. Happy Valentine's almost month.
It is Happy Valentine's month, and we are so glad you joined us. And we're looking forward to this month. It's always been a fun month for us. We love Valentine's Day.
Yes. Well, this month also, we have a couple of birthdays. Matthew has a birthday. Dr. Dave, sitting across the table from me, has a birthday. I don't really call him Dr. Dave, people, but anyway.
People, she does.
I really don't. Gorgeous, sitting across the table from me, has a birthday, and it is Valentine's Day.
That would be Dr. Gorgeous.
Dr. Gorgeous. Wow. This is just okay. We are having a Valentine's podcast series. So
yes,
welcome to that.
Absolutely. And we're so glad you joined us for the past month here as we're talking about teaching our kids the Bible. And by the way, you'll probably notice my voice is a little rough. I've had a cold, a little bit of a cough, so hopefully we can get through this one easily enough.
Yes.
And I think we can, but thank you for joining us on this last month as we talked just about training our kids in the Bible. We've gotten good feedback from that. And one of the things I had asked for at the end was, if you have any wise sayings, pass them along.
Right.
And one of our friends, Daniel Dietrich, his brother and I are especially good friends, and Daniel and I are friends as well. But he, as far as I know, is the only one that sent me wise sayings based on that episode. But he sent a couple here. He said, his father always said, hot water only brings out what was already in the tea bag.
Oh, yes.
And I guess there's truth to that, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
And then probably a similar one, the situation or friends that are around only bring out what was already in the heart. Mm. And this one he said he didn't think was very spiritual, but his dad said it all the time. A moment on the lips is a lifetime on the hips.
My father used to say that too.
I thought he did. I thought I remember your dad saying that.
Yes.
And then the other one was tell the truth, the whole truth, and tell it now.
Yes.
And those are some good sayings. And so if you have any others, we close the session or the series rather, with the idea of one of the ways we teach the Bible is via wise sayings.
Right.
And when you can teach truths with wise sayings, it helps them to lodge in the
Yes,
minds and heart of our children. So
right.
If you have any others, we'd love to hear those. Feel free to reach out to us with those. And of course, it is Valentine's month, and we had requested that you send a tribute to your spouse or write them a poem or some such. And usually from those, we choose, like maybe the top 3 and get you a gift card to a coffee shop or something. And depending on how many we get, we probably can't do everybody a coffee shop. But we certainly would like to honor that. So we've had a couple of those come in.
We did. We had one from Ashley Maxim. And the title of her email is Why My Husband is So Clutch in Our Home. And I love that, Ashley, but I have to tell you that this morning when I looked at this email, my husband he emailed me the notes for this session and different things. And I looked at that and I said, hey, Charity, who is our 16-year-old, what does clutch mean? So she had to tell me what clutch in the modern vernacular means. I know what a clutch is on a car.
I'm impressed that you know that.
But anyway, clutch does mean that it's something that is very good, or someone is very good at their job.
Absolutely. So she said that her husband is so clutch in her home, and then she wrote this tribute to her husband. You want to read that?
I am so thankful for my husband for so many reasons, and I just want to share a few. My husband and I have been married for 6 years and have had 3 children back to back, all cesarean. She was diagnosed with osteoarthritis at the age of 36 in her hip during her pregnancy and had a hip replacement after baby number 3 and became a stay-at-home mom after their 4th year of marriage, and so much more. That is amazing.
That's
Ashley.
a lot.
That is a lot. Through it all, he has been a rock for me and my family, caring and nurturing all of us, all while working a full-time day job, becoming a full-time pastor, and taking care of both of his grandparents who have now gone on to glory. My husband has been a constant and steady piece through the many ways of our short 6-year marriage. I need to say it more often, but I'm so grateful to the Lord that he is mine and I am his. There's no better person for me, and God really smiled on me and my children by having a husband like him. May God bless him and keep him and provide us with many more years of marriage, which I think is very sweet, Ashley.
I do too. And I say kudos to you, Mr. Maxim.
Yes.
And that's awesome.
Definitely clutch.
Yes, you're definitely clutch. And we don't usually use that term. Our daughter told us that we were too old to use that term.
Yes, she did tell me that this morning, that I should not be using that term. But
so we're going to use it anyway. That was pretty clutch, wasn't it?
It was very clutch.
We'll make her listen to this.
Great job, Ashley, and thank you for participating.
Absolutely. And then I got a message from my friend Brandon Daniels, and he said, this is for your Valentine's podcast, Ecclesiastes 7:28. If Solomon had found my wife Janelle for his first wife, he would have never married the other 999 women.
Oh my goodness, Daniel, you are off to a great start.
And then he said, also, I can't imagine how big a book of the Bible he would have written about my wife. And I just love that. And then he sent us a couple of quotes that he said are original to him, just something he kind of came up with, and I thought they were worth our hearing. If you focus on the 90% positives in your spouse, you will never see the 10% negatives. If you focus on the 10% negatives, you will never see the 90% positives.
That is so true.
That's a lot of truth, isn't it? Just so much truth right there. And he sent one more. If you believe your spouse is from God, finding fault with your spouse is finding fault with God.
Wow.
And I was like, well, that got a little personal, didn't it?
That's a little convicting. Way to go, Brandon.
Way to go. But that's beautiful. And thank you, Brandon, for sharing that. Now, listen, if you're out there listening and you would like to send us this, you can do it in a voicemail if you'd like. Go to keepingityoungpodcast.com. Right there on the homepage, you'll see the little microphone, and send it from there. If you want to go to our Facebook page or our Twitter or Instagram, you can send it there as well. If you'd like to just send it via email, you can do that as well. And you can do it, we got several emails, so you can do it at dnbyoung@aol.com. That's an old one. Or you can send it to my new one, pastor at, and it's WBCPB. And that's loaded, isn't it? .com.
It is. Westwood Baptist Church, Poplar Bluff.
So we'd love to hear from you. So let's just jump in here because we are starting off this Valentine's Day month with this episode. And I was doing a little research just about Valentine's Day, found all kinds of interesting things we'll probably share later. But one of the things I remember about Valentine's Day is I was in a public school, and we'd always celebrate Valentine's Day, and everybody had candy hearts. I remember the teacher would give us candy hearts. Do you remember that?
Oh, love those.
And so I was doing some research on the candy hearts, and the Chat GPT said they have been changing through time.
Oh, yes.
And I remember these. I think you maybe do as well. But when we were young, they would say, be mine, kiss me, true love, XOXO, love you, forever, sweetheart, or cutie pie.
Yes.
And then it transitioned in the internet age to this list. You want to read that one?
Text me. You are cute, or you're cute.
And that was with just rather than write out you are, that was the letter U, the letter R, and the word cute.
Yes.
You are cute.
BFF, LOL.
Now that one kind of cracked me up. So here, be my Valentine, LOL.
That's kind of a friend zoning, right?
Yeah,
I don't know.
think so.
The next one that might be on a Valentine candy would be You Rock, Soulmate, Call Me, and Miss You.
And then there's a brand new series coming out because of a new generation. And here's what it would say on the new series, according to the internet, would say Bay, or Lit,
Yes.
or Squad,
Squad. I
or
love it.
ILYSM. You know what that means?
I love you so
Absolutely.
much.
And then here's one I was told to be careful about, but it said less chill. And someone said that has kind of a double meaning now. But,
Oh, goodness, I have no
that was
idea.
actually the youth pastor here at our church.
Oh, well, he would know.
He would. And then DM me.
Oh, my goodness.
And then yes.
Yeah.
Is that how you would say that?
Yeah.
Which means a strong expression of excitement, according to the internet. And then the last one said glow up, which is a positive personal change in appearance, confidence, or style. So it's changed through the years, but Valentine's Day is still Valentine's Day.
I would much rather get the little heart candies that they had when we were growing up, because that makes a lot more sense to me.
What's your favorite one?
And they're so sweet too. Oh, I don't know. I'm looking at the XOXO.
Oh, I bet it was Kiss Me. Don't give me the XOXO.
I was thinking about to use now if I were to give one. But
gotcha.
yes, Kiss Me would be good too.
Yes, I gotcha. Well, here's what we're going to do in this particular episode, and maybe next week as well. We just thought because it's Valentine's Day, we would start a little series here. How do you keep a marriage alive and fresh? Valentine's Day is that time of the month when, we always start thinking about love. And,
the time of the year.
Or did I say time of day?
So you said time of the month. It's totally fine. It's the time of the year.
It is the time of the year. Time of the month has a different connotation, doesn't it?
It really does.
Wow. This is going to be a great episode. I
It's
can already
awesome.
tell.
It's awesome.
So how do you keep a marriage alive and fresh? And that Valentine's Day is just a wonderful time of the year, but not for everybody. Sometimes we have
true.
singles reach out to us, and it's kind of a bittersweet time of the year. They're okay with love, but they hate the fact that there's nobody to take them out. And
Right.
we're going to talk with you about what to do about that, and just several things of that sort. But because it is the month of love, I think your dad used to call it Love Month, right? This is
Yes.
Love Month. We just thought we would start. How do you keep a marriage alive and fresh? In our
Yes.
culture, more marriages fall apart than stay together. Second marriages, it just goes up exponentially. I read one statistic, like 68% of second marriages end in divorce, and it's over like 78 or 79% of third ones. So it just keeps going up in subsequent marriages. And our culture is just so, well, didn't work out. And they kind of go into it. Well, if it doesn't work out, we'll just end it. And
Right.
we come up with all these new terms, like what do they call that? You have to sign, what is it, nuptials? How do you say that?
Prenuptial agreements.
Prenuptial agreements and all of that. Man, God's plan is so much better.
Yes.
And that is you follow the Lord's plan for your life. You marry a good Christian, and the two of you serve God together, and you walk with God, and you just keep working at your marriage, and you grow.
Yes.
And one of the things I love about the church where we are here serving is that there are so many older people in our church who are in love, and they sit together in church. They serve together in our ministry. Some of them come to our youth program together, and they're involved in the bus ministry together, and they serve in our Christian school together.
Right.
And there's just something beautiful about that. Keeping the marriage alive and fresh is never an accident, but it's always worth it. So I came up with 5 words that begin with the letter D, and Bethany came in and added a 6th one. So we'll get as far as we can today and finish this up next week, I'm sure. But let's get started here. How do you keep a marriage alive and fresh?
Well, first of all, you have to decide to keep it alive and fresh.
You have to decide, is that what we want? Do we want our marriage to become stagnant and old and miserable and unhappy, or do we want it to just be alive?
Right.
And if you think about that, go back to when you first met and there were stars in your eyes and, your heart was, palpitating. Is that even a word? And, there was just that joy of like, oh my goodness, she's so beautiful, or he's so handsome, or oh my word, he's so funny,
Right.
or he's so brilliant, or, vice versa. And you really wanted, the reason you got married, I would imagine, is because, oh my goodness, this person's amazing. And really, I don't care how long you've been married. If you've been married 50 years, or if you've been married 5 months, if you've been married 5 years, you have to decide, what kind of marriage do we want?
Right.
And the way you keep a marriage alive and fresh is you start right there. You make a decision. And I'm going to just say it's never automatic. A good
Right.
marriage never happens by accident.
I would say that it is rather automatic, that daily life just takes over. And probably none of you that are listening are thinking, man, I think I'd really like my marriage to just not be that happy and not be that fresh and alive. None of you are thinking that. You just go on with daily life, and life pulls you apart from each other. Maybe you're just both very busy. We'll talk about that. Maybe little things happen that kind of get under your skin a little, but you're like, it's no big deal. But you just let it go, and you let it go instead of letting life get in the way and the little things get in the way. Decide, no, we're going to just take care of that. We're not going to go down that road. We're going to keep our marriage alive. We're going to keep it fresh. We're going to keep it romantic. We're going to keep it fun and flirty. And I think that's the decision you have to make, because most of you are not in a place where you're like, okay, I'm just done. You're probably not. Most of you are probably just in that place where you're like, we've been really busy. When was the last time I actually looked you in the face and talked to you? And when was the last time I kissed you? When was the last time we went on a date? That's probably where most of you are.
And so remember, it's just never automatic. But I put 2 more things here to tell you. It's always attainable.
Yes.
And so no matter where you are in your marriage, if the 2 of you are willing to work at it and the 2 of you are willing to take steps forward, sometimes you have to start fresh. Sometimes you have to start over. Sometimes you have to make apologies. Sometimes you need counsel. But a good marriage is always attainable.
Yes.
And I guess the hardest thing about our culture is we want things to be instant. We like things, there's a problem here. I want to fix it. Tell me how to fix it, and it's over.
Right.
But relationships never happen that way. Relationships require continual investment, continual talking, continual thinking, continual trying to make things right when things aren't what they ought to be.
Right.
So it's always attainable. It's not automatic, but it is attainable. And you may be at all kinds of different places. Bethany said, maybe most of you are just busy or whatever, but some of you may be at a place where, your marriage is just on the edge.
Yeah.
And that would not be unheard of. In the culture we live in, many marriages fall apart. So my point is, just go ahead and decide. The two of you get together and say, what do we want? Are we done? Or are we willing to make this a priority? Okay, we got married because we believed it was from God. Listen, if you are a child of God and you're thinking about divorce, I'm saying stop it. Because divorce is not God's plan. Now, I know there are things that happen that I'm going to say this gently because some of you would disagree with me strongly, but I think there are some times in the Bible where the Bible gives us a grounds for divorce. Grounds for divorce does not mean a divorce has to happen. It just means if it does happen, the Bible gives a nod in that direction that, yeah, I can understand why. But God didn't intend that. He tells us that, Jesus told us that very clearly. From the beginning, it wasn't so. So don't make divorce the option. It's not an easy option. Don't make it an option, but I am telling you, it's not the easy option.
Right. And our culture seems to make it that way. If you see divorces happening in a television show or on a movie, or even all the billboards that happen to advertise lawyers who do marital divorce, you just it seems like, oh, well, that's the easy out. But the fallout from that, emotionally, spiritually, it's just, and if there are children in the picture, there is a lot of trauma that happens
Absolutely.
there. It's not an easy option.
So the point we would make to you is decide to do everything in your power to keep your marriage healthy.
Yes.
Just decide. This is what we want. All right? So let's get a second word. What is the second word? How do you keep a marriage alive and fresh?
Well, I was just going to say,
Okay.
David had alluded to this. You had alluded to this earlier, that there could be people out there listening that are like, okay, we just really need a miracle. And when I first saw the notes for this, I thought, wow, some of this is a little bit heavy. And especially that first point, like, we're just going to decide whether we're going to stay married, and not only stay married, but keep it alive and fresh. And I thought, boy, this could be a little heavy, because I'm thinking Valentine's marriage episode, it's going to be just all light and fluffy and fun. And we're going to do some of that too. We're going to talk about some light things too. But I was also thinking that in this culture, it is not unusual for even Christian families, Christian marriages, to really struggle. And some of you, maybe you're even in ministry and you think to yourself, who am I going to go talk to? Our church body comes and talks to us. They come and get counsel from us. Who do we go talk to if we have marriage trouble? And sometimes it's so easy just to sweep all those little things under the rug, and you keep sweeping and sweeping, and pretty soon you got a pretty big mound under that rug, and it's hard to get over. And you are really struggling in your marriage. And so you're thinking, hey, we're planning a Valentine's event for our church body, and we don't even feel like we're really in love right now. We don't even want to celebrate Valentine's Day. We need a miracle in our marriage. And so when I looked at the notes at first and was like, whoa, this is kind of heavy, I thought, well, maybe somebody needs that. Maybe somebody out there needs to, just the first step. We need to decide, you know what? I love you, and I love God, and I want this marriage to work.
And I think I would add one more thing to it. I'm just sitting here thinking about this before we go to that next point. Sometimes you just have to decide to do what the Bible says.
Absolutely.
And it's so easy in our culture to say, you know what, I think I'm just going to leave. Wait a minute. Do you believe the Bible? Are you a follower of God? Do you follow the Bible? Then don't leave. Recommit, reaffirm, go to work, get counsel if you need it, because God is not wanting your marriage to end.
Absolutely.
So we would just start here with this word, decide. What's the next word?
The next word, we are finally going to move on to it. It is the word develop.
Now, I like that word. Develop a best friend relationship. Because the closer you are in your marriage friendship, the easier it is to make your marriage happy.
Yes.
And that is why you get married. In our culture, there are cultures around the world, and I don't know, maybe somebody's listening from one of those cultures to where marriage it's predetermined. And you get married to the person your parents betrothed you to. It was predetermined before you even met the person, and maybe the time you're going to meet them is at your wedding. And it's strangely odd that in many cultures that works beautifully. A couple gets married, stays together the rest of their life because it's accepted and they're taught how to make that work. But in our culture, for you that live here in the United States and in a Western culture, we typically marry the person we like. We meet a person, we like them, so we marry that person. And we marry them because we develop this close relationship. And really, for the longest time when you and I were dating, this goes back a few years ago now, but when you and I were dating, remember, for the longest time, we wouldn't say that we were dating. We were just friends. And the word you used, do you remember this?
I do.
What was the word?
Chums.
We were just chums. We're just chums. And we attended Pensacola Christian College, and in those days they had Panhellenic mail.
Yes.
And what they would do is between dorms, residence halls, between the residence halls in the evening time, you could put mail in a certain box, and there would be people on the Panhellenic Council who were, signed up, and they would deliver mail from the guy's dorm to the girl's dorm, or whatever.
Yes.
And Bethany and I would exchange notes in the evening. We did that all the time.
Right.
And she would always sign her notes, "Your chum,"
Yes.
in those days. But what was happening in the midst of that, although we were cautious about, saying, we're this dating couple or whatever, we were beginning to develop a relationship. And as the relationship grows, that's when you begin to fall in love. That's when you say, you know what, I could marry this person and live with them the rest of my life. And for some reason, we just have this incredible habit in our culture of getting, we get married and we let that relationship begin to die. And every time that does, we have a problem. So the word is develop. What are some other things we can develop? A best friend relationship, and what else?
Well, we need some good habits.
Like what?
Like praying together. There are so many couples who tell us, "Oh, we don't pray together." And sometimes it seems like it's almost awkward to them. And I do understand, because when you are praying, it's a very vulnerable position. You are opening yourself up to your heart, to the God of the universe, who really already knows everything that's in your heart. But you're also opening yourself up to other people who are listening to you pray. And so I can understand that it's a very vulnerable position, but can we not be the most vulnerable with those that we are married to? We at least should be able to. And I will tell you, at least from the wife's position, at least from my wife heart, it is one of the most amazing things that we do together. It draws us closer together. Of course, it draws us closer to God because we're talking to God. And it calms my heart over things. There might be something that we're discussing, in our walk in the morning. We walk in the morning and we might discuss something that might be a concern on my heart. But when we get back from our walk, we always talk to God before we start our day. And so we'll pray together, and it just calms my heart. And I just feel like, okay, it's not just me praying about this. David is also praying about this, and the Lord's got this, and I can go. And so I would say a good habit to develop is to pray together.
And here's another one. A good habit is to talk through every issue. And every couple has issues,
Yes.
and God's plan is He gave us this gift of communication, so we talk through them. And sometimes that takes longer than others. Sometimes Beth and I can talk about an issue, and a few moments later,
Right.
all is well. And sometimes it takes a couple of days. and we
It's not that we're talking for 48 hours straight.
no, but the issue comes up, and we try to solve
Yes.
it, and it's not quite there, and we talk about it some more.
Yes.
And it's not like we're leaving each other, we're not mad at each other, but just some more to talk through on that issue.
Right.
And it's a good habit. Never ignore issues. And I put in my notes, a good habit is to just keep talking through the issue until your heart is resolved.
Yes.
And you just keep talking through the issue until your heart has peace, until you come to an understanding finally.
Right. I think couples tend to, well, first of all, we don't have a lot of time. And so we're just like, okay, whatever. So usually in a married couple, one of them pushes and pushes and pushes until they get their way. And the other one is very used to just being passive and taking the back seat and just being like, fine, whatever, you always get your way anyway. And that's just not a happy way to live. That doesn't keep things fresh and alive. That just makes things miserable, really, for both of you. Even if you do get your way, it wasn't because you both agreed to it. It was because you had to push and roll over somebody just to do it.
Absolutely.
So I think it's better if you can just take the time to talk it out.
Yes, I agree with that. So we need to develop a best friend relationship. We should develop good habits, and I'd add one more.
We need to develop trust in one another.
Trust. And that can be a tricky one in our generation.
Yes.
Because sometimes in a relationship, there are issues that come up. And in our culture, like, porn is a big one. And, it can be a little bit of porn or a whole lot of porn. And all of a sudden it comes up. And so trust is something that has to continually be built and rebuilt.
Yes.
And if that issue is part of your marriage, don't ever give up on your marriage. Don't ever allow that to damage your marriage. Make things right, and go to work to rebuild trust.
Yes.
And the trust, trust is not just porn. Sometimes, trust is, maybe you're a strong personality, and so you kind of overrun your spouse. You're harsh, or you're belittling, or you're sarcastic, and your spouse after a while begins to pull away because they don't want to trust you with their heart.
Right.
And so trust, it has to be built on all fronts. We have to continually earn trust and give trust and solve issues, because this is a big one. Develop. If you're going to keep your marriage alive and fresh, you have to decide, you have to develop, and let's at least get the third one started, and then we'll be out of time here in a couple of minutes.
Okay, well, I was just thinking on developing trust. Proverbs 31 does say, the heart of her husband does safely trust in her. And girls, we often think of trust issues on our side. That, can I trust him that he's not looking at another woman? Can I trust him that he's not looking at pictures that he should not look at? And on and on and on it goes. But the Bible specifically addresses that husbands can trust in their wife, that their heart feels safe with her. And so just take that, wives, and just marinate it in your heart today and just try to think that through. Does my husband safely trust in me? Can he come home and tell me anything? Does he feel like he can share his heart with me? Does he feel like he can trust me with our finances, with our children, with the running of the household, and different things like that?
That's excellent. Well, we have a few moments here, but let's get the word discern.
Yes.
Is our third word. How do you keep a marriage alive and fresh? Well, you have to discern, and there are several things under here that is important, but let's get the first one and we'll be done.
Okay.
You have to discern your spouse's needs or desires. And that's a hard one, because in our culture, we're very self-focused.
Yes.
And a lot of couples will come in, or she'll say something like, he's just always so needy. He just always wants my body. Or, he'll come in, he's like, she's just so emotional. She's just always so needy. And it's a terrible way to think.
Right.
Discernment is knowing your spouse's needs and then taking spiritual steps and wisdom steps to say, how can I meet this need in my spouse? Insecurity may mean that your spouse has a need that you can meet. Maybe there's an insecurity somewhere.
Right.
And when there's an insecurity, you ought to be discerning. What could I do to improve that insecurity? I know I've told it before on this podcast, I'm sure, but I remember the love poem called The Song of Solomon, when she is insecure about her tan because she's a working girl headed to the palace to be with King Solomon. The girls at the palace are not working girls, so they aren't tanned. They're pale skinned, which puts you in a whole different class of people.
Right.
But he goes overboard in the Song of Solomon to build her in that insecurity. He keeps telling her all the time, your cheeks are comely, your cheeks are just amazing. And he just goes on and on and on describing her beauty, because he's trying to overcome that insecurity. And that's probably a good place to stop. You have any further thoughts on that before we sign off for the day?
Well, if you're discerning your spouse's needs and or desires, it also could just be that we need to have a conversation. There are some times, and I would say especially ladies, wives, we can be more guilty of this. He should just know. We just want him to know. We want him to read our heart. We want him to read our mind. And our husbands are not mind readers. They cannot. And so if you're sitting there thinking, that's right, he needs to discern my needs, he needs to discern, then maybe you also need to have a little conversation.
Yeah. And I would just point out one thing there. If your thought about needs involves the word me and my, you've missed the point.
Yes.
Discerning needs is about your spouse.
Right.
It's about saying, what can I do? How can I meet your needs? And when a couple is focused on each other's needs instead of their own needs, that's a real good step towards an amazing marriage. And that's where it has to start. Well, we're out of time. Can you believe it flew by so fast?
Yes, it did.
And thank you for joining us today. We're talking about keeping marriage alive and fresh. And I hope you'll continue with us throughout this whole month as we're talking about, Valentine's Day and the love and all of that. So we're happy you joined us, and reach out to us. Remember all of our podcast sites and our social media sites. Anything we can do to help you, please reach out. We'd be happy to.
And please keep sending in those emails about your spouse, why your spouse is so very special to you, and maybe you can win a gift card to your favorite coffee shop.
Absolutely. Well, thanks for joining us. This is Keeping It Young podcast, and this week we hope you will serve the Lord with gladness.
The Keeping It Young podcast is a Bax 5 Media production.